I want to back up real quick and just say something is, if it comes to mentoring somebody, you need to follow up with them. It can't be a one and done, right? A lot of people have to reflect and collect their thoughts, feelings, and emotions on an experience before they are prepared to ask follow-up questions. And so being able to be available for people, that's one of the biggest things. Like, a lot of times people think mentorship is me having to physically take somebody out there and sacrifice my time, money, and resources in order to teach somebody how to hunt. It's not true. Mentorship is just spending time with someone on the phone, right? Video call, pull up Onyx, go through e-scouting together, share a screen, FaceTime. Like, being available and following up with people is the biggest thing. And it'll never go void. So remember, you can never outgive good, right?
Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host. And here at RedBeard Outdoors, I talk about faith, family, fitness, and the outdoors. We have an amazing guest for you guys today. Being the Saturday sit-down edition of the podcast, we have Johnny Mack from Soul Seekers Nation. Johnny is a teacher by trade, but loves to hunt, loves to get outdoors. And you can tell he's a teacher because he enjoys helping others as well, as he is also on his journey of pursuing hunting as much as he can, getting outdoors as much as he can, and sharing that with others. So all of that is encompassed in our conversation today, and more about Soul Seekers Nation that you're definitely going to want to get to know through Johnny, and along with CarbonTV, where we both have our shows on CarbonTV. So stay tuned for that. Before we get into that, I do want to give you guys kind of an update here of what we're going to be doing. So starting in 2025, we're going to be doing things a little different. If you're listening to the podcast on audio only, it will continue to be, but only on a 1 episode per week basis. So every Saturday, I will launch a new episode of the podcast. And that's just how it's going to be for the audio only version, because I feel like the gear reviews and such will be better used on YouTube. They definitely, you guys have shown that they do better on YouTube, and I get a lot more comments and interaction there, and you get to see the actual items. So I highly recommend that you check out YouTube and CarbonTV for gear reviews. Those will still be going on multiple times a week, gear items that I use and such. And then every once in a while, I'll throw in a solo episode where I talk about things such as my whitetail recap or elk hunting or something quick. I may throw in there every once in a while for the audio only listeners as well as the YouTube audience. So that's coming up in 2025. Also, there is a new podcast that we're going to be launching in 2025 that I hope you guys enjoy. It's something that I will be adding to the RedBeard Outdoors Facebook, the RedBeard Outdoors Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel as well. But it will be something that will be launching in the audio-only platforms starting in 2025. You guys are going to get a kick out of it, and I hope you enjoy it. Last but not least, if you want to support the show, use the codes down below. It will get you the best pricing possible on all the gear that I use, the partners of the show that show support to me and also you, and give back to you as we are going through this year and into the next year. So with all of that being said, guys, I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Subscribe to the channel if you like what you are watching. Follow along on the social media platforms. And of course, if you're listening to the audio only version, leave a follow. I really appreciate that. Hopefully you guys are getting as much out of this as I am, as I get to have these awesome conversations and share the information about the gear that I use with you. So without further ado, guys, let's get into this conversation, what you came for today, here with Johnny Mack from Soul Seekers Nation. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today we've got an amazing guest for you guys. We have Johnny Mack with Soul Seekers. If you haven't looked up his videos, YouTube, podcast, all of his content that he puts out there, he does a really good job of basically, the way that I would put it is it is a great intro into getting people outdoors and hunting and storytelling in that manner, rather than focusing on killing the biggest, oldest, gnarliest, takes 5 years to kill this animal kind of deal. You know, Johnny does a really good job of, and he is a teacher, so it makes sense why you do a good job of walking people through this stuff. But in real life, outside of the podcast world, he's a teacher, he's a father, and just absolutely loves getting outdoors and mentoring people whenever he can. So we're going to get into a little bit of that, how to talk about hunting if you've been into hunting for a while. Maybe you have some people that are interested in it, or maybe you don't have anyone that's interested in it, and it could be your own fault because of the way you talk about it. So we're going to get into that and how we can address those conversations a little bit better. But before we get into all of that, Johnny, who are you, man? For people that don't know you.
Well, who am I? A bunch of descriptors. Father of three, husband to a beautiful wife, passionate hunter, someone who lives a life that is powerful, inspiring, and transforming, and is a leader in my day-to-day life. So those are just some of the descriptors. The who I am, right? We get so caught up in what we do is who we are, but what we do is not actually who we are as human beings. So I love that question because it's very philosophical, and I like to dive down that road quite often.
Yeah. Yeah, we on the podcast when I was a guest on yours, you were like, "Are you normally this philosophical?" I'm like, "I don't usually have the opportunity to be, but when I do." But no, that's awesome, man. So with that being said, let's get started with, how did you get into, well, first, why did you start Soul Seekers? And then we'll move into why, how you got started hunting, and then definitely about the conversation around hunting in general. So why did you start Soul Seekers?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people just kind of assume that when you have social media account or YouTube channel or whatever, it's just like that's what it, you know, out to get free gear or whatnot. It's like my journey is a little different. 10 years ago, so I just turned 40 this year. 10 years ago, I'm 1 decade into becoming a hunter. I took my hunter safety course. I was a high school football coach, middle school boys and girls basketball coach, track coach. I worked at REI on top of doing that and having a full-time job and still having hobbies and passions and all that. So my journey and career, no one ever taught me hunting. No one ever said, "Hey, you like the outdoors, you like to fish, you like to backpack. I bet you'd like to hunt." I didn't have anyone in my life that taught me gun safety or taught me these things that are life skills, right? To be able to be self-reliant, courageous, and be something that can bless others through this journey. So I always had this call upon my soul, kind of like a young boy wanting to challenge his grit and determination and see where he stacks up in the wild, right? Like where am I at in comparison to how tough I am, what mental fortitude, the courage of a man, and because I always felt like a scared little boy. My household was tumultuous at times, and it left me not really knowing where my place was in the world. Kind of go along to get along. Did a lot of things to appease other people and kept my voice and my opinions and my beliefs and what my views of the world to myself. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I was like, I want to hunt. That's what I want to do. And so every summer I would spend, before high school football started, backpacking. I worked at REI and didn't even know what public lands was. So this whole, like, you asked me the question, like, how did Soul Seeker start? This is all one story and it blends in. And the purpose of it is that I realized that there's a lot of things I did not know about this world and a lot of things that I wanted to learn. 2014, I completed my hunter safety course and became a hunter. And I was a weekend warrior in between trying to figure out how to go hunting with all my different coaching and work responsibilities. So I ended up getting into coyote hunting first. I've always been a proponent of the Second Amendment. AR-15 was my second gun I ever bought, and it was awesome. It still is to this day. I'm a big proponent of it, and I recommend everyone having one, or at least one in their collection. And so I would go coyote hunting because it was open year round, and found out it was very difficult, and I had to learn where I could hunt and how to hunt, and it just wasn't very successful. So it took me 4 years before I realized like how to get into big game hunting. And for me, the beginning of August, it was bear season, and it's open for 2 weeks before high school football starts. And so I was like, man, you can hike the same trails that I would always backpack and carry a weapon. I guess I'm a bear hunter. Never game meat up until this point. Definitely scared of bears. Not anymore, but back then, like I was, the traditional backpacker, like, oh man, a bear's gonna get me. It's around every corner in the woods, and get to bear camp and should we hang our food? Oh, we should hang our food. We don't want, the bears to get in. It's like, wait. No. If the bears come into camp, that would actually make it a whole lot easier. Just this journey of like identifying my fears and the things that I want. And I put myself out there, went into the backcountry, ended up killing a beautiful black bear 9 miles into the backcountry of the state of Washington. Actually had it spotted by a day hiker, a female yoga instructor from Seattle. And that was quite an interaction. That was really like when you mentioned how do we talk about hunting. My hunting career started with having to talk about hunting to people that are non-hunters or even anti-hunters. And that really set the stage and paved the way for what I wanted to create. Just real quick, I'll share a quick story on that. Is 9 miles in the backcountry dressed in camouflage. It's a hot August day. And I always learn like, oh, you got to get away from the crowd. You got to get away from the people. And I'm like, 9 miles, this is deep. Like, we should be good. And all of a sudden I heard a dog start barking. Like, I'm like, what's going on? Day hiker, female yoga instructor, and her 2 male students come day hiking all the way into our bear location. I'm like, golly, I only have limited time. This dog's probably going to mess it up. I wasn't confident enough in my skill set to even know exactly how to go about that. We end up interacting with them, and I wanted to talk to him like, hey, are you planning on sticking around all day? What's the plan? And they're like, hey, wait, you're dressed in camouflage. What are you guys doing up here? Oh, we're hunting. You're hunting? What are you hunting? Black bears. Black bears? I didn't know there's black bears up here. I'm just like, yeah, black bears everywhere. Just put it out there for them. And they're like, well, what are you going to do with it? I was like, well, we're going to eat it. And then we're going to pack it off this mountain and take it home and eat more of it. They're like, oh, wow. I didn't know you could hunt bears. And so like that very instant was the first interaction of me talking about hunting to a non-hunter. And especially out in the field where they could ruin a hunt or really mess up the hunting location, which ironically, this elk up behind me, I have a story about that because I interacted with hikers on that one as well. And it wasn't a good interaction like this one. So anyways, we go about our day, and it turns out to be evening time right before we do dinner. We're about to get geared up and go out for the evening hunt. And this lady goes, bear! She's standing like 30 yards from me, and she just points. And I'm like, no freaking way. She's just messing with us.
Yeah.
Anyway, she ended up spotting a bear that was like 125 yards away from where we were sitting. And I ended up chasing it down in Birkenstocks because that was a little bit of my REI granola side of me. I believe I first world record, the fastest land movement in Birkenstocks, but also to kill a bear wearing those bad boys. Anyway, so that was that. And then, I shot it and had it spotted by someone who's not a hunter. And then it's like, is it safe to come up? It's like, yeah, come see it. Come lay your hand on it. Come experience this. And she was cool with it. The 2 guys that she was with did not like it. After that, they didn't really want to talk with us. It's just very interesting perspective. So the whole point of answering your question of how did Soul Seeker start? Well, Soul Seeker started solely because I knew that I had the most difficult time. It took me 4 years to notch my first tag. Had the most difficult time getting into hunting. And if I, being a 30-year-old man with little kids at home, there had to be more people like me, and I needed a community of support. And I also wanted to provide a community of support. So it started with an Instagram account, started with a website, with me starting to do outdoor writing, blogging, turned into, I'm also a DJ and I'm used to being on a microphone. And so I was like, dude, I'm going to throw my own event. And I'm, like Field of Dream style. If you build it, they will come. Right. So I advertised through my Instagram account that probably only had like 200 followers at the time, a preseason hunting kickoff event. And 13 people showed up from all over the state of Washington at the time.
Wow.
And just from there, it took off. I wanted to do outdoor speaking, so started speaking at seminars, Western Hunt Expo, outdoor riding, turned into a podcast, turned into, we were already filming hunts for YouTube just because I wanted to watch my own experience later on, just my way of journaling and documenting. Took third place in the 2021 Badlands Film Festival, and I was already connected with Jana Waller of Skullbound TV, who is best friends with Jules McQueen at CarbonTV. Mm-hmm. And we got to meet through going to the hunt expos and chatting. And Jana was actually one of the first people as a guest on my podcast. And so from there, just you meet people and you network and you build a community by putting yourself out there, not being afraid to put yourself out there. And that led to me having a show on CarbonTV, and we're filming season 5, and that's going to release here in 2025. And it's all to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. If you want hunting to last for generations to come, then you got to invest in the hearts and lives of other people, and that you can never outgive good, because hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. And so to share that with people and to articulate that to people, be like, I'm living testimony that hunting transformed my life. I'm a better hunter, or a better hunter. I'm now a hunter, but I'm a better father, a better husband, a better worker, a better business owner, a better employee, a better human being, all these different things, specifically because I chose to become a hunter. And through that and the lessons learned and the experiences had and the way we interact with this world has led me to just be a better human solely because I became a hunter.
That's awesome. So, no, I love that journey. It's a good story there. It it's an interesting way to get started with coyotes and then bears and then other big game. Usually bears are not people's first interaction with hunting, let alone coyotes, because, you think of going out and shooting coyotes and you don't eat them usually. People that do, I don't know how you do it. I have no interest in doing that, but that's really cool that you had that experience. And I would agree, as far as people, it's a mixed bag of people that you can run into out there in the woods. You go right here in Bountiful, Utah, they see me hiking with a bow. Everyone here is like, oh yeah, we've seen some does here, we've seen this there, and where are you allowed to shoot, and what's the hunting limits? And some people even say, can you come into our backyard because they're eating our garden, and they're very nice here. And then you get into some of the other areas and some of these canyons, and I don't know if it's because they've had bad experience with hunters or what, but they get very uppity about things like that. They see you hiking with a rifle or a bow, and they don't like you automatically. They don't even care if you've had a conversation with them or not. They just automatically think you're a bad person. And so, it's interesting to have those different interactions with people. So with that, it's definitely shaped the last 10 years of your life. And now you've got a big portion of your life that is in the outdoors and hunting. What do you recommend? So let's go through a couple different scenarios of talking with people about hunting, about our passion for the outdoors. How does that even come up for you with other people, whether it be non-hunters or people that are interested in hunting or whatever it may be?
It's a great question. I think, the first thing I just want to back up is being an educator, being a school teacher for as long as I have, especially in the state of Washington, which is more liberal in politics. And, without stereotyping or blanket statement, the majority of the people that live in Western Washington, where I lived at the time, didn't hunt, and they didn't, city folk are not as familiar or comfortable with taking the life of an animal regardless of whether or not they eat meat, there's so much distance in between the piece of meat on their plate that they stick with a fork and how that animal ended up getting there. So when it came to talking about hunting, I didn't know exactly how to talk about hunting. I just shared like my experiences. I was like, this is the best thing in the world. I love this. You guys got to try it. You got to try it. And I was met with a lot of resistance in that area of the woods, in the world, in the United States. So much so that I ended up doing a little game feed. Well, people didn't know it was a game feed. At my school that I was working at, we had different school departments, like English department or history department or PE department, which is what I taught, was responsible for each month providing snacks for the staff. Well, we decided to have a taco feed one day, and everyone was like, okay, you're going to do what portion of the tacos are you doing? I was like, I'll provide the meat, and just got done after I shot this elk right here behind me. I was like, I'll do all the ground meat. I'll bring it. Well, I didn't tell them that it was elk, not cow. And it caused an uproar once I brought this giant crock pot of ground meat to have for tacos, which no one would have ever known or been able to tell the difference, especially when you put taco seasoning in it. It's like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Well, the word got out, and from one of my other staff members, they ended up bringing beef because they were like, people aren't going to like that. They're not going to like eating elk. And so I brought 8 pounds of ground meat, and it barely even got touched. Hold on real quick. I just had a gun delivered and I have to sign for this.
Perfect.
So
I'll fill in the blank here. So, with that being said, and we'll continue with a story here in a minute, but it is interesting to me, just kind of a side note, how things get in people's heads about elk versus beef or pork or whatever it is. Once they hear that it's a game animal, for some reason, things don't go the way that you would think they would. So here's a couple tips that I've had for people. One, don't try and trick people. Be honest with them. Like don't try and trick people into that. It usually doesn't turn out very good if you end up trying to trick people into eating game meat. But two, create a good, like, actually make it taste good. Don't overcook it. Obviously with bear, you definitely have to make it well done. But as far as elk or deer, don't overcook it. Make sure it's a good seasoning. And then, I've got a couple of tips on that that we could get into a little bit later. But big thing is, don't try and trick people. I know you may think it's funny, but for some people, it may not be too funny when they find out that it's game meat. So anyway, let's get back into this. So they brought beef along with your elk.
yeah, and so I ended up cooking all this ground elk and barely got touched, and almost I ended up having to eat a lot of ground meat over the next 2 days because I didn't want it to go to waste.
Yeah.
The story goes, just like you're saying, don't trick people. I wasn't trying to trick people, but I didn't want to spend money on ground meat. I was like, I have ground meat. I'm going to supply.
I'm not saying that that's what you were doing, but I'm just saying for people, like, I know people personally that are like, oh, I know they don't like game meat, but I'm going to pretend like this is beef. Like, don't be, that definitely will not turn out well for the majority of people out there. I tried that one time with my wife on just turkey. Like, it wasn't even game meat, just turkey meat in spaghetti. And she doesn't eat anything with fins and, was it fins and feathers? Yeah, she doesn't do fish or birds of any kinds. Anyway, she's gonna hate me if she listens to this because she's like, I don't want people to know that. But anyway, going back to the beef and elk.
Yeah, and so that was my first real experience of people don't want to partake in something that is such a blessing to your life. I grew up in the Northwest in Les Schwab Tire Center. Are you familiar with Les Schwab down in Utah?
Yeah, we've got Les Schwab down here, yeah.
Their biggest sell of the year is when they give away free beef with their tires. Buy a set of tires. Oh, dude, yeah. Biggest sell of the year through Les Schwab. So this is my childhood. I'm like, the best thing that you could ever do is feed other people. bless them. Regardless of what type of meat it is, it's an opportunity for you to enhance their life and for them to share in the blessing and the take of your passion and, you know, commune together, build that community. There is a lot to be said about field to table and the organic and all that, but ultimately it's like we need to be advocates for hunting. I don't want hunting to die. I don't want it to end with me. I know how much it's impacted my life, my soul, my trajectory of my life. I want everyone to experience it. And I think very often it's such an interesting concept. It's like hunting is the ultimate selfish act and it's the ultimate selfless act all at the same time. Because when we hunt for ourselves. We hunt because we want to, because we desire it. There's that call on our soul. There's that, I want to squeeze the trigger. I want to send the arrow. I'm like, but then you also go back, and a lot of people, they want to hunt by themselves. They like hunting solo. They don't like being in a group. Like they want to get away and use that as opportunity to refresh them. But then you bring the food back, and are you feeding yourself? No, most often than not, you're feeding your friends, your family, your community, interacting with people. Oh man, you want to try some deer? You want to try some elk? You want to try, never had that? Let me give you some, and it's the ultimate community aspect is sharing the food in which you take. So it's quite interesting. And working in public education at the time, which our public education in the state of Washington doesn't teach hunter safety, which there is, down in Texas and in the Midwest, you get a lot of the outdoor education ingrained and brought into public education through the school system, right? So I ended up bringing archery into schools. That was extremely difficult for me to become a national archery in schools instructor, even though it's proven and like it's safe and all this. Bringing it into more of an urban setting, it's like, I don't know, like, the kid's going to be okay. What are the parents going to say? And a lot of people everyone gets really worried about what are others going to think? What are others going to think, rather than being like, well, what's best for the child? Right? I just did a podcast this last week with Daisy BB guns, super awesome episode. And the hashtag, it all starts with a Daisy, right? Like I never was taught gun safety, but I had a BB gun growing up. And I learned, and I ended up learning very quickly how to be safe with that weapon. And that translated into, so you may not have a swimming pool in your backyard, but you're going to want your children to learn how to swim because they're going to encounter swimming pools and swimming in their lives. Right. And it's exact same with firearm safety, outdoor education, and all that. And so it's just really interesting how where you go in different parts of the world, how much hunting is accepted or not accepted. And so to evaluate that, and yeah, birds of a feather like to flock together, and that is a very true statement. But at the end of the day, we're all ambassadors and advocates for hunting. And so regardless of where we go, we bring hunting with us. Like, I'm Johnny Mack, I'm a hunter, right? Like, you're going to talk to me. Yeah, I can talk sports. Yeah, I can talk business. I can talk all that. But what do I really want to talk about? I want to talk about shooting animals because it's awesome. Hey, take a look at this picture, like,
exactly.
It's the best. And so we got to learn how to talk about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. And so I guess what ended up happening? Did people eat the elk meat?
Barely touched it. Someone ended up sign up, said this is elk meat, and yeah, shame. Then I learned very quickly that I worked with a bunch of vegetarians and vegans specifically. And I was like, I did not know that. Not to be judgmental, but you would think that vegetarians or vegans would be very concerned about their overall health and fitness levels. It didn't show, right? So it's like, okay, well, let that just be stated. Like, you obviously think you care about your health, but you don't actually care about your health. I just got done doing the carnivore diet this year, and I felt the best I've ever felt in my entire life. Meat is, well, let's tie it back to 1995 in Jurassic Park. Proteins are the building block of life, right? Well, where does protein come from? meat. You got to eat meat, and you got to eat way more meat than you think. And the food pyramid and the dietary guidelines from the government is all a bunch of BS. It's all lies, because you will know when your body feels good when you go through a process, and you don't need somebody else to tell you when you're healthy. Like, I know in alignment with myself, I feel good. I feel rested. I feel full of energy. My skin is healthy. My bones and joints don't hurt. Like, stop listening to other people and start listening to your own inner self. And that is one of the big things that hunting specifically taught me, is to stop relying on other people and be self-reliant and know thyself. You know, when you're out in the woods putting a stalk on an animal, it's not like, hey, mom, dad, what do you think I should do? Hey, check with my boss real quick. You know, no, it's you and nature. So that was one of the biggest things.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And you know, it's, I don't know, in general, I've had I don't know, I guess different discussions with people about hunting. Even, you know, I just killed a doe here in Utah, and I think by the time this podcast's out, I'll have my, I guess my whitetail, or not my whitetail, my mule deer experience from this year, this November, kind of in an episode. So I'll just go ahead and say, you know, I killed a doe, and we have a discussion. Like, my daughter, who is she'll be 8 in a couple weeks, she asked me, the first thing she asked was, did she have babies? And we've had that discussion before, where just like with bears, you don't shoot bears with cubs, even though in some states that might be legal. It's kind of an ethical thing, where it's like, you know, you're killing that bear and you're kind of leaving those cubs to starve, kind of deal. And with my kids, you know, we talked about it. If it's less than a yearling, you know, we don't kill a doe that's got babies. That's just what we do. And so that was her first question. I told her no, she didn't have any with her. You know, and that, like, immediately calmed her down, and she went into the other discussions of, okay, what are we gonna cook? How are we gonna? Did you bring home the back straps and the heart? Which is my kid's favorite, is the heart. We always, within a day or two of killing an animal, we do heart fajitas over rice or in some tortillas or something like that. And they absolutely love that. That is their favorite. That's the first thing my son asks me when I get home is, do you have the heart? Like, of course, you know, even coming back from Wisconsin, I left all my other meat there at the butcher's. I flew home with the heart, because I knew that was the first thing. He wasn't going to ask me about how big the antlers were. Like, they don't ask that. They're like, where's the heart? We want the heart. You know, but it's interesting that, you know, I've kind of taught them that way, especially my daughter, who's concerned about the babies of these animals. And so there's people out there that have, you know, they have this thought of, hunters go and they just butcher these animals, and they, you know, that a gunshot takes them forever to die, and where they're taking 10 shots at them and spooking them and creating panic. And, you know, there are those hunters out there, unfortunately, that are like that. And we had an experience like that here in East Canyon, here in Utah, where a guy was literally, it looked like he was driving to work and just pulled over and had his bow in the back of his truck and was trying to shoot a deer off the road at over 100 yards. And I'll just say, you could tell he doesn't practice with his bow very often. So why are you shooting an animal at over 100 yards? Like, those kind of
Right.
things, I don't destroy them on social media, because I don't want to ruin, you know, or cause infighting. But at the same time, if I knew who that guy was, I'd be like, hey, bud, like, let's have a discussion about what are your real capabilities and what kind of portrayal you're putting out there for hunters. Going
Right.
back to, you're concerned about what other people think. I'm a huge proponent of teaching my kids, it doesn't really matter in the long run what other people think, if you know you're in the right. But if you're wanting to have a discussion or further the discussion on, for example, hunting, something that is unfortunately controversial, you do need to portray yourself in a better light. You know, don't take pictures and post them everywhere of blood dripping down your chin, biting into the heart on Valentine's Day, or, you know, things like that. Just that doesn't, even though it may be a picture you share with your buddies, it doesn't create a good conversation with people that you need to have the conversation with, which are mainly the non-hunters. So, you know, aside from that story of the elk and the cow meat, what I guess, what are some other experiences that you've had that turned out well with having conversations with people about hunting?
You know, that's a great question. I think first off, let's use Proposition 127 that just got defeated in Colorado as an example.
Woo!
I want to tie that in real quick because people aren't educated, right? We don't know what we don't know. Ignorance is bliss, right? There all the sayings that you want to share in order to be like, well, less is more. The less I know, the better off I am in that regard. Well, that can be true, but that's not a very fulfilling life, right? Either you're green and growing, or you're ripe and rotting, or you just are withered away and never produce fruit in the first place. And with that being said, is regardless of how you talk about hunting, you need to be concerned with you as an individual and your own personal character. Because how I tie this into Proposition 127 and what happened in Colorado is, regardless of whether or not someone wants to hunt or whether they will support hunting, what they can get behind is supporting you as an individual. And it's like, oh, well, I know Jonathan. I know he loves to hunt and he's a good person.
Yep.
And you know what? I don't want to take that away from him. And so I'm going to support him on this, even though I don't necessarily support hunting. I'm going to support Jonathan as a human being. And that is one of the biggest things. And we need to realize is that we are an ever continuing ripple effect in this world. Wherever we go, we are not isolated. We are not an island. Everything we do, say, our ways of being, how we show up in this world impacts and affects everyone and everything around us. And we leave a wake of either destruction or positivity. And so when one of the things I always like to talk and how to talk about hunting is this idea of legacy. What are you leaving behind? And that ties in very critically with hunting, because we always talk about, and I use quotes, conservation. Hunters love to toss out the word conservation. It's like, do you really actually know what that means? Are you talking about making sure that there's animals left over for the next generation? Are we talking about carrying capacity of a certain hunting location? Are you also talking about your legacy and the skills and the knowledge and the ways of being and how you're showing up in this world being passed on, right? So I currently work in a alternative education discipline campus. I have a metal detector. We have no windows. Students are in uniforms. It's very strict. If a kid refuses to follow along to my instructions, I have to clear the whole classroom and we call a police officer in. Like, that's the type of environment that I work in. And what I learned very fast, and I already kind of knew this, but it's like these beautiful meetings of these roads. Instead of a fork in the road, all my roads are diverting into one path, and it's really fun. And that is sin begats sin. Abuse begats abuse. Hurt people hurt people. And the cycle of abuse, the cycle of pain, the cycle of sin, the cycle of whatever you want continues generation after generation until somebody says, no more. That will not continue anymore. I'm putting an end to it. And when we look at that and understand how important each and every single human being is, our legacy rides with that. So the flip side is we don't want negativity to continue. We want hunting to continue. So how do we continue something that's a beautiful, wonderful, awe-inspiring, infused thing to continue year after year, generation after generation? And that is by telling stories that inspire, that motivate, that show love and passion and grit and determination and every other positive characteristic that you could attribute to a good human being. And that is how you talk about hunting to make it the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
I had an experience one time with a neighbor, and he was a hunter. He was also a school teacher, basketball coach, and My second son was born October 21st. In the state of Washington, that is in the middle of modern rifle deer season. And that one hurt a little bit, but that's a different topic, and we can save that for later. Don't get married and don't have anniversaries and birthdays during hunting season, unless when my kid gets older, he'll always get to spend deer camp on his birthday.
There you go. Yep.
It's always how you look at it. So I'm having my son's birthday, and his family got invited over. He ended up going hunting that morning, and I was like, oh, jealous. Like, I wanted to be hunting this morning. And he comes back and he's like, hey man, I shot a deer. I'm like, that big. Like, you gotta tell me the story. And he's like, well, parked my truck at the gate and just kind of started taking a walk, and then look, like, no joke, this is how he told the story. I was just kind of going along, and I was like, hey, there's a deer. And I was like, that might be a buck. Put up my glasses. Now I saw it was a buck. Gun. Boom. Deer down. Got it. We're here at the party now. And I'm like, yeah, and like, dude, tell me the story. Yeah. Every great historical document, whether it's the Legend of Gilgamesh, Battle of Troy, 300, Achilles, this all stems around storytelling, right? Tell the story to inspire people, to light a fire, to set a spark, because you never know when that spark is going to turn the whole world ablaze, and all of a sudden you are spreading the gospel about hunting. And that is how I always view it. And I was like, dude, your story sucks. Like, I'm glad and congratulations, but this story sucks. It's no good. It didn't inspire me. It didn't make me want to go out and go experience that for myself. Right. And I always tie it into this. Like, Jonathan, you ever eaten at a really good restaurant? Yeah. When you leave that restaurant, what do you end up doing to all the people that you interact with after that?
I'll text them a picture of the food or tell them, hey, we need to come here.
Bingo. You're spreading the gospel about that restaurant. You're like, dude, the experience was great. The food was great. The atmosphere was great. The ambiance, it was awesome. You got to try it. You got to try it for yourself, right? That's what people naturally do. Well, why are we not naturally doing that for hunting? Yeah. And that right there is a crux of how we talk about hunting, right? If it is really the best thing that you've ever experienced in your life, then shout it from a mountaintop. Everybody, you need to experience this. Are you kidding me? This is life transforming. This is the best thing ever. You're going to be a better human being, a better parent, a better father, a better husband, wife, child, worker, employee, boss. The list goes on. All because you picked up hunting. All because you started hunting. And one of the things is, I was a college football player. I actually played multiple college sports, and sports was king in my world. Like, I was kind of raised the all-American child, except I didn't speak up. I had no courage of my own, right? All-star at this, all-star at that. What season is it now? Let's get going. It was all good and dandy. But you know what? Sports ends one day. Either you leave the game or the game leaves you. But you know what doesn't end? Hunting and the outdoors, and getting to experience that with other people. Because even in the five drawing a blank right here, the five stages of being a hunter, the last stage is the mentorship stage. And that even if you aren't squeezing the trigger, you find your joy from hunting by watching other people experience the joy and pleasure and grandeur of what hunting is. And that is what life is all about. Through death brings life, right? Through the dying of the fall, through the death of winter, brings spring. And when spring arrives, the flowers are popping, the grass is green, and the fawns and the elk calves are hitting the ground. And that is the beautiful part of life, but it only is experienced through the death of something. And we have to walk through that. We have to walk through the death and the challenges and the difficult times and the defeats and the burdens and all that to then be on the other side. right? Like I love nature. And I know that my apple tree that I plant is only going to produce more apples if I prune it, if I cut it back, if I trim it down and make it not necessarily look the best, but at the end of the day, come next season, it's going to produce more fruit. And a tree is always known by the fruit it bears, whether it bears good fruit or whether it bears bad fruit, or if it bears fruit at all. And so, us as hunters, what fruit are you bearing? What fruit are you bearing for hunting to last for generations to come? How are you showing up and sharing the gospel of how powerful and inspiring and life transforming hunting is?
Yeah.
Because either you are bearing positive, good, fruitful, beneficial fruit, or you're producing fruit that people are like, that doesn't look good. I don't want a part of that. I'm not going to vote for these different propositions that pop up in ballot box biology because you know what? That guy is not showing up in this world like a high quality, characteristic human being. And that is where we always have to be looking. And it's not about the judgment and how we are viewed from other people. It's about us living in integrity, in righteousness, with true values and in alignment with what we want in this world. Right? You speak out of one mouth that you're a conservationist, but then you speak out of your other side of it and you don't ever talk about hunting. It doesn't work like that, right? Like either you are or you are not. You know, in the Bible, it says, rather have you be hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. It's the same thing. It's like, dude, I'd rather have you tell me you hate hunting and you hate the fact that I'm a hunter. At least I know where you stand. If you are like, the minutia of mush, it's like, that's gross also. Like, I'd rather have it hot and cold. So those are some of the things when it comes to talking about hunting. And what I also want to share with people is specifically non-hunters, anti-hunters, right? There's the non-hunting crowd and then there's the anti-hunting crowd. And you will come across non-hunters that lean more the anti-hunting, but they're only that because of their experiences in their lives. I would only be able to talk about hunting the way I do right now because I've experienced it. Everyone has opinions. Very few people have perspectives, and perspectives are developed through experiences, right? You don't want to hunt. Have you experienced it? Okay. No, then you don't know what you're talking about. You're only talking about the movie Bambi that Disney made. I just recently watched it because I wanted to understand how that movie portrays hunters. And you know what? It doesn't portray them well. They're not hunters. They're hunting out a season, but they don't even have the seasons accurate. Like it shows it's springtime, but the deers have antlers, and it's like it doesn't make sense. So once again, that's based off of an opinion. It's not based off of an experience. It's not based off of knowledge. And the majority of human beings nowadays are talking heads. What did the mainstream media say? I'm going to regurgitate that. And I'm also only going to read the headline, and I'm not going to dive into the actual narrative of what happened. And so when we are talking heads, we are setting ourselves up for failure. You don't hold your own knowledge. You don't hold your own accountable true perspective, and then you can speak about it. But if you are relying on other people to speak up, it's going to fail, right? There's I forget who said it. There's a great quote that to not speak is to speak. By not saying anything, you're allowing yourself to then show to the world that you don't care. And a lot of people have feedback that I get when it comes to talking about hunting is that it's like, oh man, well, I don't really know it that well. Well, whose fault is that? You love it, learn it, get to know it, get to know the talking points, right? I don't know how many millions of dollars conservation brings in off the top of my head, but the more I recite it and the more I dive into that, the more I'm going to learn it, right? And if I truly want hunting to last, I'm going to spend time there because time spent is where your heart is, right? Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. And this is the importance of talking about hunting. So tying it back into the school that I teach at and the type of people that I work with, we're constantly teaching them life skills. And what we learn, and a lot of our stuff is drawn out of a lot of AA type stuff, like because that's founded in really good things. Well, anger covers hurt and fear. So when you're interacting with an anti-hunter or a non-hunter that leans more anti than pro, and they start to get angry, anger only covers hurt and fear. They were either hurt by somebody who hunted in the past, or they're scared of losing something that they know and love. Same thing goes the other way, as we're talking to anti-hunters and we get angry out of hurt or fear. More often it's fear of losing hunting, right? Like we get fearful, and so that fear causes us to get angry. And anger is all right, but anger put in the wrong place or towards the wrong people is completely wrong. Yeah. So understanding that our experiences are filtered through a perspective, right? Like if I was the teacher, I had my whiteboard, I'd be drawing up right here. Experiences are filtered through filtered through their perception, and through their perception creates thoughts, and through those thoughts create feelings, and through those feelings create emotions, through those emotions create actions, and actions have consequences. And so if you can actually understand the psychology of how human beings work, then you can come to them with love and a humble heart and gentleness and meekness and kindness and long suffering and patience. And you can talk to people and love them through their disagreement, through their anger, in which builds because of their hurt and fear that could be covered through that anger. And these are all how you end up going about talking about hunting. And I'll be giving a seminar in February at the Western Hunt Expo, specifically with how to talk about hunting. That'll be on Sunday. I'll also be giving a Bear 101 seminar on Saturday at the Western Hunt Expo this year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's a big deal too. So yeah, anyone coming to the Western Hunt Expo, let me know. I'd love to meet you, but also definitely get in on those seminars that you're giving. With that, also when you're addressing a lot of how to talk to people initially, and I 100% agree with that. But let's dive into even more so once you've gotten someone interested, and even more on the mentorship side. What are some things that we can do to be better stewards of and keeping people interested in the hunting experience? And I'll just say from me personally, taking my son hunting with a bow, and he's done rifle and now bow, and we've got a couple days left in our late season archery for mule deer. He has put on more stalks in the last, I think we've been out just over the last 2 weekends, 3 or 4 trips up. He's been within 40 yards, which is what we've determined as his shooting distance on mule deer 5 times. And he's learning now. I wish he had some headphones so I could, be on the phone with him, walking him in, but he has to pick up his phone and I have to walk him in a little bit more. And then anyway, he's learning to experience failure. I'm kind of glad that he didn't just smack a doe the first time that he got close enough, because he has to learn that failure. But it's how we handle that. So I'm not pushing him and making him do certain things. I don't make it the worst hunt out there, because there's a lot of places where we can hike in 5 or 6 miles and maybe see a deer or two and then blow a stalk like he has on these shorter 1 mile or less hike-ins, be miserable, be cold, etc. That's not the experience that he needs right now. And so I'm taking him in and saying, look, what is your limit? What are you willing to shoot? He said anything, a doe, spike, whatever. Like, he's willing to shoot whatever. Cool. We've established that. We went out to the range. We established what he's comfortable shooting at before we got on the mountain, which is key, guys. Don't get up there and you see this big buck coming in at 80 yards and all of a sudden you are Robin Hood and can shoot that far. That's not how you should handle it. Set a limit ahead of time. And then when there are failures, like when he's gone in on the stalk, celebrate the wins and then what you can learn from that experience. So like with him, you know, when I saw him, he was 22 yards on Sunday from 3 does, and he couldn't see him because of the scrub oak. He could see the tips of their ears moving, and that was it. He was in the perfect spot if they would just stand up, and they didn't stand up. They jumped and ran. And so in that moment, instead of being like, oh gosh, dang it, why didn't you do this and that and blah, I can't believe you didn't see him, and why, like, instead of that, like, I saw him run off and I immediately called him. I was like, dude, that was freaking awesome. You got 22 yards from 3 mule deer. How does that feel? Like, you know, talking about it like that rather than going down the negative rabbit hole that we can all go down when we blow a stalk. Instead, making it a great learning experience. That's kind of, for me, how right now I'm on this mentorship journey with my son, and walking that line of not pushing him too hard, but also not letting him just sit back and not go out hunting when he's got a tag in his pocket. So how are some things, or what are some things that you've done once you do have someone that you are mentoring, whether it's your own kids or someone else's kids or a friend or whoever? What are some things that you've found that are key to keep them engaged and wanting to continue to go out?
This is a multi-part question, by the way, and thanks for asking this.
Yeah.
When you're talking about your own kids, because these are separate, right? Your own children is your household, and then outside of your own household, you have people that you want to get into hunting. So, speaking to your own kids, first off, my belief is, and I had this conversation with my good friend Weston Alexander, who I took him on his very first backcountry hunt, and he got to kill his very first black bear with me, and that was actually the first like backcountry hunting video I ever posted on my YouTube channel. So if you ever want to go watch it, like an old school one, that's on our YouTube channel. Now, as far as parenting goes, I asked him the other day, I was like, man, you know, I was a college quarterback. I played sports. I want my kids to have skills for success. I don't care really if they play sports or whatever. I just want them to be successful, be good humans and positive contributors to society, and to be critical thinkers, question everything. I was talking to him and I was like, man, my kids, they never want to throw a ball with me. And they never want to do this with me and do that with me. But we have great interactions. So it's not like they're not doing it like. And he goes, well, that sounds like you want them to do what you want them to do. He goes, you ever ask them what they want to do with you? And I was like, that's a great question. So that being posed for you as a parent to your children, what do you want to do with me? And allowing the child to have that voice and share their voice on how it goes about. And that ties into the mentorship thing, right? Also, how do you keep kids interested in hunting? You got to make it fun. You got to have wins, small wins, lots of snacks, right? Snacks help pass the time. And so doing scavenger hunts with kids. All right, hey, we're going to go hunting today. We're going to be looking for birds. How many birds can you see? And have you found a deer track? Have you found an elk track? Which way have we found a game trail? You create a list of scavenger hunt things and start checking them off. Oh, Dad, we found this. Oh, Dad, we found that. You know, oh, did you see that one? And make it about the experience, not about the end destination, right? So if we're only focused on arrowing that animal or shooting that animal, well, I sat 12 days in my hunting blind down here in Texas this year, and I saw 3 deer that entire time.
Wow. Sounds like you need a new spot.
Yeah, well, welcome to private lease hunting. Like you get what you get. Like that is a part of it. So with that being said, is like, if I only hunted for the pure joy of seeing that animal die and for me to put my hands on it, then I don't really know if I could hunt. Like you have to have more than just that as the one sole purpose. And so sharing that with the kids and teaching them that, like, hey, if you if you don't feel good in your soul, like there's a difference between being lazy and wanting to do something else. Right? Those are two different things. Like if your heart's not in it, I get that, but speak that up. So what do you want to do with me? That's one of the things when it comes to parenting and kids. Now my children are younger, right? So my oldest is 9 years old, 7, and I have a 5-year-old. So my kids are more in that, daddy, let's get on the floor with me type of stage and all that. So when it comes to older kids, okay, my oldest kid, he has shot a deer. When my first year in Texas, we got taken out during youth weekend, and I had a guy who I met take my oldest boy out on a deer hunt, and he shot a deer. Awesome. He loved it. He did not put his hands on that animal as far as gutting it and all that. Not forcing him through experiences. I don't want to traumatize people. You don't want to be traumatized as a human being, right? So removing the hurdle of creating a traumatizing situation and allowing people to step into things rather than just pushing them off the bridge, right? Like, this is you. Like, I'm going to remember this forever and how I hated the fact that you did it, even though they may like it, right? So I'm all for advocating, teaching people how to speak up for what they truly want and what they really believe. And when it comes to people who are not your children and mentoring them, I personally believe that if it's a big game hunt, the best way to get a new hunter in on a big game hunt is to them follow you and them not have a tag in their pocket. Okay. Why? Because when they have the tag in their pocket, there's so many different things that are rolling through their head. Like, am I ever going to see an animal? Oh, am I ever going to see a legal animal? Am I doing it right? Like, no. Let them go through the experience of a hunt without the pressure of filling a tag. As a school teacher, I know for a fact that if people don't have success within a short period of time, the majority of them give up.
Yep.
They say, this is not for me. I don't like it. I don't like it because I'm not having success. Not that they don't like it, but they don't like not having success. Those are two very different things, right? So they don't like it because they're not having success. It's going to take too much time to get successful, and therefore I rather go do something different. So when you can put somebody afield and have them trail you and you be the person that, hunts, it actually allows them to immerse themselves into how to hunt without the pressure of, am I doing it right? And constantly judging themselves and questioning themselves and being filled with self-doubt. One of the two biggest things that I experience when it comes to new hunters is, where can I hunt and how do I find animals? So if you can address those two questions, explain to what public land is, what national forest, what BLM, what DNR, what state forest, what are lands that you can hunt, and explain that to people that already, now you've eliminated one barrier to entry. Where do I hunt? If you live in a state where private landowners work with the state to open up their land, and it's public access through private lands, find that out. And then use that as an avenue to push people to get connected with their fish and game agencies or their wildlife departments. Mm-hmm. That is huge, right? Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. If you are spoon feeding people and like, oh, here's an animal, shoot it, then they don't feel like there's ownership in that, right? They want to own hunting. And ultimately, when it comes to talking about hunting, I could care less whether or not people hunt. What I care about is them voting pro hunting and pro firearms and pro Second Amendment, right? Like, yeah, more hunters means more competition. I get that. I'm not ignorant to that fact. But more people that align with my values, it makes for a better world also. So that is what I'm more focused on. So if you can take somebody afield and give them experience that they're like, I see why you like this. I see why you like this. Okay, I'm ready to now take my hunter safety, or maybe I've already taken my hunter safety and now I'm ready to work through this. Okay, so now you've shown me where to hunt. Now the thing is how to find animals. And I like to really have it all laid out. More often than not, when people are talking about hunting, they're talking about deer hunting. I want to be a hunter. I'm going to hunt deer. Well, there are a lot of animals out there that you can hunt, and you don't have to be a deer hunter, such as me getting into hunting through coyotes and black bears. I am a huge advocate for hunting predators. Number one, black bear seasons are extremely long, and they offer their seasons in different times of the year, which may free up people more often than not. And or I'm a child of the 90s, so I use the term cross training, right? Bo Jackson was really good at baseball and really good at football and really good at track. And he did all of those really well. Well, you want to be really good at deer hunting, you need to get afield more. You need to get out afield. Well, how do you do that? It's hard to just be like, oh, I'm going to go for a hike. That can be boring for a lot of people. Go predator hunt, go spring bear hunt. And when you're spring bear hunting, look for deer, look for elk, look for grouse, look for all these other animals because you're afield. Look for turkeys and use that as a cross platform to grow confidence in finding animals. Because we're not talking about the ultimate success of killing that elk or killing that deer. We're looking for small wins. Small wins. I hated coming home from when I first started hunting and my wife being like, how was your trip? Oh, it was good. Well, did you see anything? No, I didn't even see a Tweety bird. Like I saw nothing. That's defeating, and that sucks sharing that with people. So then small wins. Babe, I didn't see any animals, but I saw a really good game trail and heavy used tracks and what looked like fresh tracks. Okay, that's a win. Write that down, put it in your memory bank, chalk it up. Okay, so go to onX. onX is the best, absolute the best resource for hunters and new hunters. Go on onX, find where those tracks were, zoom out. Animals need food, shelter, water. Okay, so if their shelter was in the timber, so they already have that. So then where are they feeding and where are they drinking? Okay, there's a creek nearby. Okay, so there's your shelter and your water. So now where are they eating? And then different animals, based off of that, you target their food sources, right? If it's deer, elk, maybe they're looking for those meadows or those benches that get more sun exposure. For spring bear, fall bear, fall bear, you're looking for the berries or the acorns hitting the ground. But for spring bear, you're looking for fresh grass that's growing and fresh sprouts that are popping up in the springtime because they got to eat that to get their digestion going, to kick out that plug so that they can prepare their gut and stomachs in order to start eating all the fawns and calves that are hitting the ground. So when you can articulate this to newer hunters, then it starts putting the puzzle pieces together, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have this beautiful picture, and I'm starting to understand it. It doesn't mean it's going to be automatic. It doesn't mean you're going to be really good at first. But I remember, and this was only just a couple of years ago, where I stopped and I came home and I was like, I'm a hunter now. I've already killed animals. Like I've killed animals, but I felt like I was a hunter because every time I went afield, I found the animals I was looking for. And that for me was when I felt like I've reached my moment of I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so the small wins, and these are the things that, then the other thing that people really get nervous about is, okay, I killed an animal, now what? Right? And so instead of taking a newer hunter out and having the pressure of them shooting an animal because maybe you don't know how good of a marksman they are or how good of a shot they are, and the pressure of that first buck fever moment of like, man, this is it. Eliminate that from them. You go through your process. You have an opportunity to shoot it. It takes the pressure off of them, and then get them a knife and say, we're going to break this down together. And then people are scared of what they don't know, the unknown. Us as hunters, that's what makes it exciting, right? This is why hunters don't. The majority of people. Well, let me retract that statement. I had Andrew McKeon, the former editor-in-chief of Outdoor Life magazine, on my podcast, and he said if every hunt was canned and he knew what the outcome was going to be, he wouldn't like hunting. He goes, what makes it fun is the unknown. And through the unknown is what brings the adrenaline and the highs and the lows and the questions and the unsurety. The unknown is what makes it exciting. Not for a new person. The unknown is scary. It brings fear, right? And fear covers hurt or pain of some sort, or just like they know that they've messed up in their past and they don't want to do it wrong, and like take them through it. Basic biology class. All animals have heart and lungs, right? Go through it, break it down, and all of a sudden it doesn't look like a furry critter anymore. It just looks like meat, and it just lowers that barrier of entry. It makes them more confident. It's the best thing that you can do is the first known trait of a human being is courage. And when we are courageous and we are living out what we're meant to be, that means we are filling other people with courage. That is to encourage them. Best thing we can do is to encourage other people. And to fill somebody with courage is the ability to not make it scary, not make it intimidating. And maybe some people hearing this podcast are like, man, that sounds pretty childish. Well, you got to understand that even if it's a 40-year-old man who's never hunted before and never had that experience, yes, take it and talk to them like they are a child in that specific manner. Put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. And, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Was it difficult? Was it scary? Was it intimidating? And constantly inwardly reflect, because when we inwardly reflect, we outwardly correct.
Love that. That's awesome. I think those are some really good pointers, and for people out there looking for ways to be better mentors, to be able to encourage people to go hunting with them, or even to how to have that conversation. I strongly recommend that you pull something from this conversation, but also reach out to Johnny, reach out to me. We're more than happy to help you with that, because we definitely want hunting to continue moving forward. We want ethical hunters. We don't want people that are just flinging arrows and lead downrange. We want people that enjoy the experience, not just the kill. And we want people that can genuinely utilize the meat that they're going to be harvesting as well from that animal that they've killed. And I think that is important as well to talk about it. Harvest and kill seems to get interchanged, and I feel like, for me personally, there is a difference. You harvest the meat from the animal. You're not harvesting the animal, because you didn't cultivate that animal. You didn't feed it. You didn't raise it like you do a cattle. In my opinion, this is personal opinion. Obviously, everyone else can have their own, but you harvest the meat from the animal that you've killed. It is still a life that you are taking. And that is something that every time, even that doe that I killed yesterday, before I even started taking pictures or anything, I just took a minute, said a little prayer of gratitude, and just recognize, again, that's a life that I took. Yes, I trained for it. I worked my butt off for it. I did everything in my power, but also that's something that was provided to me from God, and that animal's life meant something, and now it will continue as it provides for my family. So distinguishing that and not shying away from the fact that you are taking a life, that is something that can be hard for people. And so being able to recognize, some people are going to react the first time they kill something. They're going to react by crying, or they may react with shaking or extreme joy or whatever. Be ready for it, and be ready to have that conversation, and also to remind them to lock in that emotion that they're feeling right then, and to remember that because it is something that's super important for new hunters and for people that have been hunting for decades. It's something that keeps you going and keeps that excitement rolling so that you continue to want to do it. So with that being said, Johnny, where can people find you and your show? I know you've mentioned CarbonTV. For people that don't know about CarbonTV, my show's on there as well. You're obviously probably not listening to it on CarbonTV, but if you are, great, go find Johnny Mack's show, Soul Seekers. If you're not, go over to CarbonTV. It is a free opportunity to go in and listen to hunters from whitetails to western to everything in between, newbies and people that have been doing it for decades. It's a free app that you can download and utilize, or even go online and watch different shows basically that you can listen to or watch on there. So where else can they find you?
Yeah, I just real quick, I want to share. Like, I always talk about my spiel for CarbonTV is that it's Netflix for hunting, fishing, but it's free, right? Like, if you love Netflix, which everyone loves Netflix and chilling in the appropriate way, people, come on now. It's, you can watch Netflix, but for hunting, fishing, and the outdoors. And on top of that, you can catch podcasts on there as well. So download it on Apple TV, Fire Stick, Chrome Stick, carbontv.com, your cell phone, app stores, whatever. It's a great way. It's always on. It's always free. Great hunting shows, which you can catch my hunting show, Soul Seekers, but you can also catch my podcast, the Soul Seekers podcast is on there as well. YouTube channels, Soul Seekers, Instagram, soulseekersnation.com or Soul Seekers Nation. I have a website with a lot of articles up there, a lot of different stuff, hunting 101 all the way through philosophical psychology, tips, tactics, all that. That is soulseekersnation.com. But I want to back up real quick and just say something is, if it comes to mentoring somebody, you need to follow up with them. It can't be a one and done, right? A lot of people have to reflect and collect their thoughts, feelings, and emotions on an experience before they are prepared to ask follow-up questions. And so being able to be available for people, that's one of the biggest things. Like, a lot of times people think mentorship is me having to physically take somebody out there and sacrifice my time, money, and resources in order to teach somebody how to hunt. It's not true. Mentorship is just spending time with someone on the phone, right? Video call, pull up Onyx, go through e-scouting together, share a screen, FaceTime. Like, being available and following up with people is the biggest thing. And it'll never go void. So remember, you can never outgive good, right? So, and just real quick, I want to share my mission statement is mentorship is conservation. Mentorship is conservation. Remember that. Share it. Spread the gospel, because we're all ambassadors for hunting, and it's time for us to start acting like it.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Johnny, I appreciate your time today, guys. I'm going to leave the links down below where you can find Johnny and his podcast, his Instagram, and his show on CarbonTV. Again, everyone out there, if you have questions about this, leave them down below in the YouTube channel, and otherwise email me. It's redbeardoutdoors@gmail.com. Send me some questions or send them over to Johnny when you find him on Instagram. You can message him on there as well. So with that being said, thanks so much again, man. Appreciate your time and everything that you're doing for the hunting community and the outdoorsmen and women out there that are looking to pursue their passions and learn a little bit more. And like I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Johnny Mack, guys. He is a stud. He loves learning, loves teaching, and really enjoys getting in the outdoors. So go check out his channel. I'll leave the links down below. Also, guys, if you're looking to support as we're wrapping up the year, getting into the Christmas time frame where you're purchasing gifts, maybe even some last-minute gifts, go and check out BlackOvis, code RedBeard. Go and check out GoRuck. RedBeard Outdoors is the code over there. The links are all down below. They have some blowout sales right now, guys. Holy cow. Go and check them out. You definitely want to go get in on those opportunities. Phorm also has some amazing clearance items for clothing if you're looking for some clothing items, or if you're interested in any of the supplementation that I use, definitely check them out. They make the best supplements possible and have an amazing opportunity for you to learn through the app and the many people that are involved in the Facebook group over at First Phorm Outdoors Facebook group. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for your support, for tuning in today. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.